You had mentioned Fourth Ezra earlier, which is a text you've devoted a considerable amount of time to. And ostensibly, it's lamenting the destruction of the first temple of Solomon. But most scholars believe that it dates from considerably later, possibly actually lamenting the destruction of the second temple. And this text, like so many others of the Second Temple period, it has, visions of realms that you wouldn't normally see. It has angels interacting with the human who's treated to this display. Would you say that that type of narrative is much more common, at least in the Second Temple period, where there's this like visiting of another realm and interaction with angels and so forth?
Yeah, well, let me begin by just saying how deceptive the term Second Temple Judaism is, because we know, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a scholar that said that Fourth Ezra was written before the destruction of the Second Temple. Everyone would acknowledge that it was written after the destruction of the Second Temple, and it has this paradigmatic kina, what Esther Chazon and Michael Stone called the first kina in Vision 4, where it laments over the temple in a kind of rewriting of Eicha, very powerful, powerful text. What I want to say is that it's quite characteristic of what we would call Hellenistic period and late antique historical Jewish texts from the period. Not all of the texts look like this, but Zechariah, Daniel, Jubilees, Fourth Ezra, the Syriac apocalypse of Baruch, and many other texts, 4Q mysteries, other texts that sing.
Some of the Enoch texts.
So Enoch,
perhaps?
sure, the Enochic materials, first Enoch and beyond, Hechalot. So they're Jewish texts that are only preserved in early Christian materials, but also a book like Revelation is a text that really shares a lot of features with a text like Fourth Ezra. So what I would say is that a number of the features of Fourth Ezra located in this period of late Hellenistic Judaism and late antiquity. And it's also participating in pagan and Christian themes as well as Jewish themes of the period. But it's not, this very famous rabbinic scholar called it the first rabbinic work we have. I mean, and everyone claims that the books, the esoteric and the exoteric, at the very end of this work, there are books that are exoteric, which seems to be a re-revealed Tanakh, something like, something very much like what we have now in the form of a canon, as well as esoteric traditions. And some people say it's Masechtot of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Other people say it's the scrolls in the book of Revelation. Other people talk about it as Gnostic esoterica. We don't know what the texts are. I think in a very simple way, Fourth Ezra is writing itself into this collection and self-authorizing, which is, by the way, not so unusual. I think we see this in many texts across the prophetic and sapiential materials in ancient Judaism, from Tanakh all the way through the Hellenistic period and beyond. But the only reason why I push back on Second Temple is, first of all, some of the texts that we call Second Temple are actually written in diaspora. They're not necessarily land of Israel, but even more than that, it's a historical period that locates influences and contributes to the shaping of Judaism in this golden age. I don't think it's an age of humiliation or assimilation. I think it's an age of vibrant and vital tenacity and survival. And Fourth Ezra, I believe, is part of that story of overcoming what is almost certainly a reaction to the decimation of the Jewish people in the aftermath of the Bar Kokhba revolts in 132 to 134.
So you would place it in the 2nd century even?
I would, as it reflects, many people from the discussions of Adorno after the Shoah to discussions of how to date and when to date Lamentations. I think most scholars, especially informed by trauma studies and psychoanalysis, will argue that descriptions of trauma and destruction are not written in the immediate aftermath of destruction. And there's a kind of paralysis and silence in the face of destruction. I wrote about this a little bit in the language of Eich Nashir et Shir Adonai Alat Mat Nechar. Is it possible to sing a song of God on foreign soil. And I took this in part as a question: is it possible to sing again, to speak again, to utter again in the face of destruction? And I think the book of Lamentations itself, Echa, also is reflecting on the possibility or the impossibility of speaking in the aftermath of destruction. And Fourth Ezra, the protagonist in Fourth Ezra, who's called Shealtiel, he's called Ezra. Sometimes he seems to be Daniel or better than Daniel, or he's a Jeremiah figure at the very end. He seems to be like Moses again. This is a figure who is struggling to find the words to articulate what it means to overcome destruction. If it's ever possible, is it ever possible to overcome loss? It's one of the themes I work out in my book, as you know.
Shalom friends, Dr. Eli Lizorkin Eisenberg is here for you with great news. Today we introduce our new 7-day tuition-free trial for you to study with Israel Bible Center. That's right, you heard me right. This is 7-day, a whole week of studying before you pay any of tuition at all. You will now be able to see for yourself what is the Certificate in Jewish Context and Culture program. You will get over 45 crash courses on variety of Jewish context and culture topics. You will be granted access to more than 55 roundtable talks with world-leading scholars of Jewish background, of New Testament and the Hebrew Bible. You will truly be surprised at the value you're going to receive from studying at Israel Bible Center. You've got nothing to lose, so go ahead and click on the link, sign up for your 7 free tuition days of trial.